Hello all and welcome to Belfast Worm Farm. Some of you have picked up on the subtle change that we've removed the us at the end of our name. We just thought that this is the farm and we're the farmers, so there's no point calling ourselves Belfast Worm Farmers. So there's a slight subtle change in the name across all of our social media. Some of you have picked up on it and that's fantastic that you did. We hope that the transition would be unnoticeable, but some of you did, so thanks to the eagle-eyed people there that was watching it. Last night there was a storm, still kind of blowing now, yellow warning storm, called Storm Gareth, that blew across with 70-mile-an-hour winds. So that's Storm Gareth moving in over the north of England and Northern Ireland last night and early this morning. Fellow worm farmers would have known the barometric pressure that the wind causes would have made the worms come to the surface, so we're just having a quick check on our worm bins behind us just to make sure none have escaped and gone off venturing. In our last video we found little tiny white eggs in one of our worm bins, and it turns out that it's slugs. We had considered about the bins behind us, and we had think about taping the tops on to stop any slugs getting in, but I think it was just human error. We left one of the worm bins open, one of the ones that's not inside the greenhouse on this side, but one of the ones down this side, and that's where we found the eggs. So if you do find little white eggs in your clear eggs, if you do find them in your worm bin, then just remove them as quickly as you can. Slugs will eat your worms, as we found out after doing a Google search and asking on various groups across the internet. So just going to check on the worms. There's no signs of activity of the worms on this bin getting out. The telltale signs is, see in the corner these little white bits, that's where worms have been. If you see them along the top edge of your worm bin, that's a telltale sign that the worms are trying to get out. You would see it along here. Condensation on the top of your worm bin, but with no casting, means the worms have, it means that there's no worms activity getting out of there, so that's not a bad sign. This is worm bin number 1. There are some signs that worms have been at the top of here. There's a sign there that the worm is at the very top of it. This is also the bin that we had the orange in, which I'm just going to check on now. See, the worms there have come to the surface, but they're not trying to escape, which is a good sign. So healthy worms there. Worms underneath the orange, which is just a gooey mess now. So that's where the orange was. Worms are underneath that. So, trusted worm snug, trusty worm snug with worms in there. There's a tiny baby worm up here. Yeah, that's smaller than my finger now. I'm just going to move him back in here. Oh, he got out. This is worm bin number 4. The carrot bin, the carrot experiment bin. The carrot is getting eaten, as you can clearly see here. The time-lapse video isn't going to work. Someone pointed out to us that we needed to have the camera in exactly the same point and take the photograph roughly every 4 hours to make it work. We were taking it every day. When you play it back, it is not good. This is a sign that the worms have been around the top. See how the castings are around the top? All the way around. That's a sign that the worms have been at the top. The worms are present at the top of here, but they haven't escaped. Still very moist in there. Loads and loads of castings in there already, and like, the worms are all fine in there. Hundreds of cocoons in that one. Just going to leave that one alone. When I pull back the lid of this, you can see some small worms at the side. I think they're just exploring. I don't think they're trying to get out. There's a really tiny one over that side. So I think the storm hasn't played any effect with our worms at all. I was quite worried when I got up this morning, thinking that they two hiding down there. It pays to check your worm bin. I thought that was a worm. On closer inspection, it's a millipede. The millipedes will eat your worms. It's a worrying sign. Another tiny baby worm on the lid. See, that's the size of my finger beside it. It is very small. I nearly put the lid on and squished him. It's a nice colour already. See if the camera can pick in on him. There you go. Oh. Last bin that we're checking on today, we've got loads of growy things. I'm not quite sure if they're peas or beans or something, but they're growing in there. We put something in there and they're growing from there. Loads of signs of healthy worms underneath the avocado. Everywhere you look in this bin, there's just beautiful worms and castlings and cocoons. It's awesome to see. So that wraps it up pretty much for today. There's not much else I can really do. The worms are fine, there's no problems, they're not escaping. So that's it. We've been asked on our social media platforms how we produce our paper pulp. Although we have a video of it, it's also been suggested that we put a GoPro cam in the top of the food blender to see like an inside view of the paper getting mashed up. So be a recap of how we make our paper pulp, and also there'll be a GoPro cam placed on top of it rather than the next. I don't want to destroy the GoPro cam. So we just rip the egg trays and apple packing trays and egg cartons into smaller pieces that we can actually fit into the food processor. Just drop them in like that, as you've seen in our previous video. Lid on, and then blend it. That's all it is to it. This is what it ends up like, paper pulp, as you've seen in a previous video. Changed a different colour this time. Don't think it'll make any difference with the worms, but it'll make it look interesting. We found that by blending it in the food processor, it chops it up very, very fibrously, and the worms are loving it. Our worms will eat about half a cup of this a day, and we'll show you that shortly in this video. So that's the worms in the sheds checked on. No problems at all, just a few little juveniles just trying to escape it and go exploring by the looks of it. So the pressure, the biometric pressure, hasn't had any effect on our worms, but if you do have a worm bin, just check on them, especially after a heavy wind like we had last night. That concludes today's video. Just short, just because I was worried about the worms basically. Until next time, thanks very much, bye bye.